Welcome back to another episode of the Electric Election Podcast. I am your host for this episode, Benji Backer, president and founder of the Conservation Coalition. And right in front of me, I have some manure, and it's not from a cow named Wagner, which was my original thought, but this is some of the manure that is used here in Dane, Wisconsin to create renewable natural gas, and we are sitting in front of the compost of that renewable natural gas that comes from the methane. I'm also joined by our co-host and the executive vice president of the Conservation Coalition, Danielle Butcher, and Zeina El-Azzi, who is the chief development officer and co-founder of Brightmark. Zeina, can you tell us where we are, who you are, and what we're doing here?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. So I'm Zeina, and we are here in Wisconsin in Dane County, and we're at a location that collects manure from dairy farms, 3 around this area directly, and then several more in addition to that, and we create biogas, renewable natural gas from these materials. It's pretty great.
It's really impressive because I think most people, when they think of the agricultural industry, they know that there is a negative kind of consequence of methane to the environment, but you're actually doing something about it, and you're providing this great environmental benefit that also has economic benefits. Can you tell us a little bit about this amazing concept that you have as a company, this at Brightmark? It's about reducing, pretty much creating zero waste while also reducing emissions, and how you can do it in a place like this.
Our goal at Brightmark is to be a zero waste company and to create a world without waste in general. We focus on a variety of different sustainable technologies to reduce carbon emissions and to reduce environmental impacts from both organic and inorganic materials. We have 2 major divisions right now. One focuses on poop. We get manure from dairies, swine facilities, and other types of animal manure. We also get organic waste from food waste, and we try to generate, through a process called anaerobic digestion, renewable natural gas from that. That has a wonderful kind of overall economic benefit. It benefits the farms that we're working with because they have a baseline of economic sustainability where they're guaranteed a certain revenue stream by being our feedstock provider, right? They commit to give us their stuff. Again, whether it's manure or something else, that's what their commitment is. Our commitment is that we pay them for that stuff. And then from there, we take that and we run it through an anaerobic digester, and from there, we clean it up. We clean up the biogas, we clean up the fiber, and we're returning a product to the environment that's compostable, that doesn't have a high phosphate content. So we're helping to clean up waterways, we're helping to reduce algae blooms, and the other byproduct that's the wonderful consequence of what we do is a methane-based biogas that is essentially the same thing as pipeline quality renewable gas, renewable natural gas. And that product is, you can use it in any way that you would use natural gas, whether it's compressed natural gas for running a truck, or, turning on your stove or heating your home. It's really an amazing opportunity to capture those methane gases and reduce emissions. And then we also have an inorganic division that focuses on reducing plastic waste and essentially diverting plastic that would be headed to a landfill. And we take that plastic, we run it through our own proprietary technology, and we generate 3 types of byproducts from that: an ultra-low sulfur diesel, a naphtha blend stock, which is used to make new plastics, and wax, which can be used for anything from making candles to coating the inside of cardboard boxes to making composite materials.
Wow. I mean, I love this concept of no waste that you guys have embraced. Could you tell us a little bit about this and what this can be used for?
Sure. Essentially, this is what's called digestate or fiber. When cows eat food, whether it's grass or feed or what have you, they don't have an ability to digest all of that product in an effective way. So what comes out of that is a highly soluble and usable organic material that has a content of both, the ability to produce gas and also grass, right? I mean, this is essentially compost that will turn gas and grass, and different kind. But essentially, this is the cleaned up fiber. It goes back to farms as fertilizer. It can be land applied. It can go back to dairy farms as bedding. They use it to lay down the bedding for cows so that they have something soft to rest on. It also gets bagged and composted by another facility, and you can go and buy it off the shelf to use in your garden or for your landscaping projects as well.
So what's it been like? You have so many components of this that are positive for farmers, from the sustainable manure, putting that into renewable and natural gas, to this composting that can go back to them. What's it been like working with the farming community, and how open have they been to these sorts of solutions?
So I think at first it was a little bit difficult, to be honest. I think a lot of people approach farming communities with, solutions that haven't worked in the past. And so a lot of time at the beginning, we have to spend a significant amount of time educating these farms that A, we can do what we say we're going to do, and B, we thankfully can show them now that we have several projects that are going on, and C, that we're going to be there for the long term. Because Brightmark isn't just a developer, we're an owner and an operator of these assets, and we're here for the long haul. So if something goes wrong, if the digester breaks down, or if something happens to the gas cleanup equipment, we're going to be there to fix it. So it's become a partnership with a lot of the farms, and now, because we have been able to show that we are building these projects and they're real and they can come out and visit, they can call their friends. Honestly, the last several leads that we've gotten and opportunities that we've gotten come from the farmers that we're working with who have called their friends and said, hey, this really works. We see it working. We're making money from it. They're doing something sustainable in terms of allowing them to continue their operations, because they're under regulatory requirements for ensuring that they're not polluting waterways. It's become a much easier sell now that we have a few things to point to.
Wow. So something we talked about on the tour that I thought was really fascinating is that the small dairy farmers and the small dairy farms are kind of on the way out, and they're really struggling, and even amidst COVID it's gotten even harder. How can this sort of project help the farming community move forward and keep these communities alive that are so integral to Wisconsin?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I think a lot of people would like to see small farms continue to find a way of life in the United States, and that's part of our goal as well. Any way that we can partner with communities is important to us. The main way that we can help with these projects is provide a baseline of revenue for these farms. I mean, when we contract to take the manure from dairies, we are guaranteeing a minimum payment to them every single month or every single quarter or every single year. So when you have these market fluctuations in terms of the price of milk, because restaurants are open, or the price of milk to manufacturers who are making cheese because they're not able to sell anywhere, and it's just home consumption, they're able to weather that storm, those peaks and valleys in the price of their commodity, because they have a baseline of revenue coming from us buying their manure on a regular basis.
You said that this is one of 132 such facilities or similar. There's about 132 facilities in Wisconsin that are like this, but there need to be a lot more, and you're doing bigger projects in states like Michigan and South Dakota. How can something like this scale to a national level where this is kind of the norm?
Okay, I did not say that. Who said 132?
Oh, well, we said it on the tour.
Oh, okay. I think
Not
maybe
part of Brightmark, but anaerobic digesters in the state of Wisconsin.
Got it. Okay, and so the question is,
The question is basically, how can we continue scaling this? It's already much larger than I think most people would understand. I mean, 132 types of facilities like this in Wisconsin. How can we continue scaling this across the country?
Right, that's a good question. I think a lot of what we struggle with as a company is logistics, right? So we do need a certain number of cows or amount of manure on a daily basis in order to make a project work, because it's not just the anaerobic digester, it's buying the equipment to clean up the gas, it's ensuring that we can interconnect to a pipeline, ensuring that we can get all the permits required to establish a good project, and that costs money. And so what we really are working to try to do is improve the logistics economically for these facilities so that we can do a better job of interconnecting the smaller farms so that we can keep the smaller farms working. Nationally, I think what would be really great is a continued support of programs like this. Right now, we have a federal renewable program called the RIN program, a renewable incentive program that is for projects that create gas from different types of organics. And then from the state of California, which is basically what made this project viable, is a program called the Low Carbon Fuel Standard. And so essentially what we do is we go through an analysis that says, here are all of the different things that go into this project and what is the carbon footprint of this project. Thankfully, dairy manure projects have a very positive impact to the environment when you put on anaerobic digester and gas cleanup on them. They become carbon negative. So when you have a carbon negative score and you're working through a program like the Low Carbon Fuel Standard in California, you can get credits to build more projects like this that offset the cost of building projects like this. So I'd love to see more states and, quite frankly, on a federal level, support for these types of programs that help farms to reduce the impact of their, environmental implications, particularly with respect to water, and also create an opportunity for us to reduce carbon by having an offset program, carbon intensity programs, anything that allows for people to reduce carbon footprint in any way they can.
Wow, so it really sounds like there needs to be kind of this effort to elevate this as a potential solution in a way that it hasn't been in a lot of areas. And I think to most people, this doesn't really fit. When they think of climate solutions, a lot of people think of solar or wind or, sea levels, and they don't necessarily think of manure.
Right, poop is not very sexy.
Right. How can we... Yes, they are much more sexy, but this is making a massive difference on something that isn't sexy, and you're honestly turning into something that is sort of sexy. How can young people who really want these sorts of solutions, these sustainable climate solutions that actually work, how can they get more involved in this process?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think there's a lot of different ways that young people can get involved. I think one of the biggest things that you can do is continue to support locally anything that allows for these programs to flourish. Talk to your representatives about the fact that there is a significant resource out there that is really, really beneficial. I mean, wind turbines and solar projects have a positive carbon intensity score. They range from 30 to 60
Can you explain what that means for those who don't?
Yeah, sure. So a carbon intensity score is basically a measure that is created through a very, very thorough model that takes a project and analyzes its life cycle from the very beginning to the very end. So if you've heard of the circular economy or cradle to cradle, essentially what you're doing is you're putting a carbon tag on a project to say, where on the scale is this project? If it's really, really polluting, it's going to be positive 100, positive 200. That's how much you are intensively applying carbon into the atmosphere. If it's, very beneficial, it's going to be carbon neutral, i.e. 0 score. And if it's carbon negative, then you're essentially stacking benefits to provide essentially a very high level of benefits to the environment, and I'll explain that in a moment for this particular project and why the carbon intensity score of this project is very, very negative. It's between negative 200 and negative 300 typically for dairy projects. But going back to your question on how can young people get involved, I think really just continuing to be engaged, showing that there are ways to provide incentive to essentially be active in your community beyond just buying wind or buying solar. What you drive, supporting farms. There are a lot of different things that you can do to essentially push forward and to talk to people about, hey, the world of what we can do in terms of sustainability is much more broad than just solar and wind.
Yeah, and that's something that we struggle with as an organization is our constituency is a lot of high school, college, and postgraduate young people. And they really want to help the environment and they really want to help fight climate change, but they don't quite know exactly how because there aren't enough resources to the vast array of solutions that are out there on climate change. And, Danny, from your perspective, what's been the most difficult part for us as we've been trying to communicate these things to students, and how do you feel like we could use this sort of solution to make them feel a part of the equation?
Yeah, I think projects like this are so cool when you actually get into the details of it. The problem is, how do you communicate that in a quick way to somebody whose attention span is very short? We live in an age where social media really dictates most people's attention. So I'd actually love to toss that question back to you. How can we educate people about this in a really quick way? What's the top line message that we should be sharing on this?
Well, we have an Instagram account and we have 30-second videos on how this stuff works. So
you gotta throw the ad in the chat.
At Brightmark.
Okay, at Brightmark.
Please go visit that. You can learn about how we turn plastic into different byproducts and how we turn manure into gas and fiber. So that's one way. I think it is a challenge, right? Because these aren't simple solutions. Nothing in the world really that's worth anything to speak of happens in 30 seconds. So I think the challenge is really back on us to find ways to continue to engage young people to be involved. One of the ways that we do that at Brightmark is we do community engagement programs. It's a little bit hard right now during the pandemic, but last weekend, our team was out. We all flew out, not all, but a small group of us flew out to Washington State, and we did a beach cleanup. We got all the plastic from our beach cleanup, and we sent it over to our Ashley facility in Indiana that's recycling plastic. A lot of what we do in locations like Wisconsin is to bring schools out here to kind of show them how these projects work. We have a facility out in just outside of Seattle that we've brought a bunch of younger high school and college students that are interested in finding ways to stay in their community. They grew up in these dairy communities. They want to stay in their communities, but they don't really know how they can participate. So showing them that they can work on these kinds of projects is really cool. And to be able to give them another choice for what they can study and what they can learn about is another way that we kind of continue to engage younger people.
I love that because I loved your nothing that's worthwhile in terms of solutions is, viewable in 30 seconds. And I think that's something our generation needs to do a better job of. We've done a lot of things to push this conversation in the right direction, but these are not, simple solutions. This is a 5 or 6 step process that is pretty simple once you get the hang of it, but it's still complex. And I think getting people on tours here, giving them bite-sized pieces of information is really key. And for us as an organization, I think, it'd be awesome to start using our network to start touring your facilities across the country.
Absolutely.
Because we have this network that would love to see these things firsthand, and we do need a future generation of sustainable workers and sustainable farmers, and we need these people to lean in. And if they only know about certain things, then we're doing a disservice to them and to the environment. So one final question before we have to head off, but we're about to cross the country. We're still in the first half of our trip across the country on this 50-day road trip. What do you hope we find as we travel across the country looking for these local solutions? And maybe even what pieces of advice do you have for us?
Yeah, that's a great question. What I really hope you find, especially right now during this very challenging time for everyone, is this beautiful American innovation that I love to see across the country. People are doing amazing things right now. They're being creative and they're being innovative and they're finding ways to thrive in a particularly challenging environment. And I would love to learn what people are doing in their own backyards that's beyond what we are doing sort of on a larger scale. So I think, part of what inspires me is, the creativity and the passion of people to try to solve problems in their own communities. Because I can come in and say, hey, I really want to solve this waste problem, but I don't ever really get anywhere until I sit down with the people from the community to really understand what their specific problems are and why it matters to them. So I think that's really incredible, and I hope you are able to find some people
She just said
cool
the
stuff.
theme of the road trip, and we didn't even tell you to do it. That's exactly
you can pay
it.
me later.
I mean, we'll do the Venmo later. That's exactly it. You have to sit down with people in their backyards, and I think what you just hit on is that these solutions need to be national and international in scope, but they start in people's backyards and local communities, and they start with innovation, and they start with creativity, and they have to start there before they scale. And it seems like just in the first few years of Brightmark, you've been able to scale this at a level that is just utterly impressive, with an emphasis on utterly. And it's the dad jokes. But I really appreciate your time and sitting down with us and allowing us to tour this and just for the work that you do, because young people want zero waste and they want zero emissions, and your company is doing that at Brightmark. We're doing it here in Dane, Wisconsin, and we're honored to be sitting with you. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. And anytime you or anyone else in your network would like to visit, just let us know. We'd love to have you.
Hopefully this is just one of the first times, not the last time, that we'll be sitting in front of some manure with some of our team.
Just wear the right boots. That's all you got to do.
Well, there you have it. This is another episode of the Electric Election Road Trip podcast. Really appreciate you tuning in. Can't wait for the next episode as we head east to the beautiful state of Michigan. Thank you again for sitting down with us, Zeina and Danielle. We'll see you on the flip side.